Welcome to the Leading with Love podcast. I'm your host, Shauna Arthurs. The purpose of this podcast is to touch your heart, expand your soul, and help us all be everything we came here to be. We have interviews with amazing humans and solo episodes as well, all made to bring more love, more joy, and wisdom into your day. It's a growing list, so check back often and let's dive right in. Hello. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited today, as I always am. I have an incredible guest for you. This gentleman is someone I've known for a few years now. And from the very first time I ever connected with him in a group that we were both part of, I remember, my heart remembers how supportive he was of me and of everybody in the group. And since that time, his name is Randy, and I'll introduce him formally in a moment. I have seen him step up into his mission in this world, and the way that he supports the people that he's here to support is bar none. I've never seen anything like it. He is just so devoted to. He has this love of humanity and of helping people. Well, you'll see and you'll hear, but feel better, heal themselves. And we're just going to dive into the conversation, and I'll share, he'll share with you everything that he's up to, but his mission is beautiful and powerful, and he's actually doing it. And I mean, just today, as I was preparing for this conversation, I was just reading it again, and it just touches my heart so much. I know that it will touch yours also. And I feel like the only thing that rivals this incredible, huge mission that he has is his heart. So that's why he's on here, and I'm very, very grateful and honored. And without keeping you waiting any further, I am here to please welcome Randy Hyden. Here he comes.
Thank you, Shauna. Oh my gosh, what a warm welcome. Oh my gosh. You gave me the tingles.
Oh, excellent. I love it. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you.
My privilege and pleasure.
Yes. Okay. So I will give you the floor in a moment. But basically, to just start off, Randy has a group right now called Easier Ways, and I'm going to let him tell you all about it. But it's not just a group. It is truly a mission for those who are in a life transition. And the way that Randy talks about this, he draws from people who have been through an addiction and recovering from addiction, getting sober, things like that, and the principles that apply when you're healing yourself. And he goes very deep into, helping people not feel shame around it and feeling connected. And he's built a beautiful community that he will tell you about. Thank you, Randy, for all you do. And he's calling it Easier Ways. And what I really love about what you said is this isn't here to make it easy, just easier, which is a really powerful point, and that anybody in transition can use these principles. So tell me about that. Tell us about that.
Well, thank you for asking. Yes, so that's a key thing. I don't want anybody ever to have an unrealistic expectation that what's being shared is all of a sudden going to make everything easy. It's not. Life is hard for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But there are certain things that I've discovered and members of the community that's discovered that has made things being, easier and such. And the subheading of this, stuff we've done to stop being our own worst enemy.
Yes, I love that. It's the truth, right? Because we do get in our own way, and that's part of what, if you're going back to addictions, it's kind of, it's a self-fulfilling thing almost, or you're getting in your own way, and the beliefs that you have, and you stop yourself from healing for whatever reason. And you've seen far more of that than I have.
Well, I guess I don't. I have been continuous sober for over 16 years.
Congratulations.
So thank you. So yeah, I've seen a fair amount of it and such. But yeah, one of the things is that, well, gosh, as you mentioned, shame being a big, huge blockage. I don't know on this stuff. That speaking for myself, I just didn't even think I was worthy of having a better life. And that held things back when people were saying, it's like, you've got to stop beating yourself up over this stuff. And I'd kind of be polite and nod my head and stuff, but inside my internal dialogue is like, if you really knew me, you wouldn't be saying it. And that's something. Shame. I think it was Brene Brown who brought it up. It's
Hmm.
not Brene for me, but the more we don't talk about shame, the worse it is. Now, of course, the other side of that coin is the more that we do discuss it, then it does seem to kind of lose its power. But it takes a lot of courage, and I think it takes a lot of time and people just being patient and kind with you when you can feel safe enough to let down that invisible force field and say things like, "Yeah, I am not okay." Because we go through life every time. Think about it. How many times when you ask somebody, "How you doing?"
I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm fine. Everything's
Fine.
good.
Everything's fine.
Very elaborations and such. And I hope they really are fine. But I know for myself, I've said it countless times when no, I just didn't feel like it was appropriate to share. And usually, again, it was feelings that were based in insecurities.
Hmm.
Um, again, again, I hate myself. So if
Ah,
you find if I share with you the real me, it's certain you're going to hate me too. So
wow.
this
That
is
is
one of those,
powerful.
well, and again, in the
Not in a
recovery
good
world,
way.
just yeah, in the recovery world, shame is a real common thing, but it's probably the least people will talk about all kinds of things they've done that they aren't
Mm.
proud of. But I don't know how many people have really gotten to the point of releasing it. I hope most people do, but I think it's a long process that you really can't force. You just show up, you do the best you can to be as open, as honest, and vulnerable, as teachable as possible. And over time, it does seem to just resolve itself, but there's no set magic formula that does this.
But
Again,
you
there's
have to
processes
sit with it.
involved.
You have to be willing to feel it. And shame is a painful feeling.
Mhm.
I've
Yeah.
been through that fire, so to speak. I think we all have shame in us for whatever reasons, even if we're not recovering from addiction or anything like that. I mean, I know for me what shame feels like because I've identified my feelings and I've felt them, and it feels like burning, hot, painful, awful discomfort in your own body. It's terrible feeling.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
isolating, as you said, you're not going to go around sharing that you feel that way, and that's what I love so much about the community that you've built. Right now, I'm talking about your Facebook community because that's where I see you contributing so beautifully, and that support that you talk about, where people can actually have a safe space and feel like they are. It's almost like your Facebook group is that little safe space where you're not on a main page anywhere. You know that anybody that's in there is there for the same reason, to completely and utterly support and love each other, no holds barred. And you have set the bar there, created that space, created that structure, and we all feel safe to come in there. And the questions you ask, Randy, are so pointed and perfect, and you have so much engagement in there because we know we can trust you and we can trust each other.
Well, thank you, and that's a huge compliment because that's basically 180 degrees different from shame. Is I mean, when we
Yes.
fall in love, it
Hmm.
means we have to be vulnerable. We have to take a risk. And falling in love, of course, typically is associated with a romantic thing, but falling in love with life and other people on this journey and stuff, it involves being vulnerable and it means
Yes.
that it's risky. So,
Yes.
therefore, you have to feel a little bit of safety and security within. And of course, a lot originates with the individual. But yeah, that's the thing. I have this hypothesis that to help counteract the shame, you must feel safe.
Yeah. It's like the
And that's where it's the,
101.
I think Dr. Gabor Mate is kind of famous. If anybody's familiar with his work, he's very much involved with the addiction world.
He's
But
touring with his son right now, I think, doing
yes,
some
I
live
believe so.
shows. Yeah.
Yeah, but one of his famous sayings is Ask not why the addiction, but why the pain.
Oh,
And then he elaborated, which, so again, that's that premise that my
right.
interpretation is the addiction is the result of pain. People are
Yeah, it's
doing,
an escape, right?
to try to calm and control
Hmm.
hole in the soul, this thing that's really hard to just talk about. But I think
The
everybody's had it
ouch.
to people again do their best to manage and cope with it. Yeah. But again, people that choose to use chemicals to adjust their moods, their thoughts, and their feelings and such. It may not have necessarily directly been because of trauma, although it often is. But a lot of times, as you're going along, you're doing your stuff. Saying again, you're drinking excessively, and you do silly things that, well, you
And
kind of
so
wake
many
up.
people do,
Oh
though.
my
I mean,
God, did I really say and do that stuff? Or maybe you didn't even remember, and people remind you. It's like, I couldn't believe you did that.
whew,
Kind of, and that emotional hangover afterwards. So again, it doesn't mean you're necessarily
more
an addict,
shame.
but there's things that add on more and more that make you kind of feel less than, at least less than your standards that you think
Oof.
you should be living by. And where do these standards come from? Well, they're through our developmental years. It's either through our parents and our peers and such. But things are presented to us, we adopt, and it starts developing our identity, our persona, and we've got this going along. And next thing you know, we don't meet our own standards. So this is one thing that's really interesting. When I was going through a process of self discovery in the 12 steps, the fourth and the fifth steps, if you're not familiar with them, what it is you put together what they call a personal inventory. And what that's about is getting clarity on the causes and conditions that have brought you to this point in life. And that's the fourth step. The fifth step is you'll share it with another person, and that just basically fine tunes it, gives you a little bit more of the clarity on the matter. And I was going through this process, and the gentleman that was helping me through this, it's commonly referred to as your sponsor, but you could also call him a mentor.
Sure, of course.
And Alan and I are having this discussion. I'm like, I feel so guilty. And he goes, there's a reason for it. Please tell me why. He goes, because you are.
Ooh,
And I'm like, oh, that
punch
was
to the
too.
gut.
But don't worry, we'll get through that later on in the process and such. But please remember and stuff here, guilt is violating social standards. Like things like I would borrow money and not have any intention of ever paying it back. Okay. That's basically stealing from your friends. I basically violated the trust
Wow.
of our relationship. And yeah, even though it was unspoken and stuff, yeah, it's of the if you could envision anybody that would loan you money, I'm not talking thousands of dollars. It could just be $100 and stuff,
Hmm.
but that bucks is $100, even if it was $10. Um, and if there's a level of trust, somebody will say, yeah, here's $10, and I never pay them back. I have basically betrayed the trust. And again, we had a close enough relationship. You would give me something, and you may or may not have given it to me expecting it to come back. But again, I've violated this relationship, and
Yes.
I've betrayed my friends, and yeah,
And yourself, your own sense of trust. It's a
and
self-fulfilling thing. Wow.
yeah. So it's just again, I was guilty of this. But the thing about shame is that's violating your internal standards. Okay.
Ooh.
So what I was touching on there is I go, yeah, it's like I'd never do a friend wrong. And then I go ahead and did again that scenario I just described. I did them wrong. And that's the thing is you can whatever say you're guilty of that borrowing money and not paying it back. You give it back the money back, and if they want interest and stuff, whatever it is, you reconcile that, or whatever it may be. It's called. That's what I was inferring to later on in the process. You make your
Right.
amends. You do your best to right your wrongs in the past, and of course, not everything can be corrected. But yeah, you do this externally, but internally, if you have not been able to forgive yourself for
Right.
this,
You haven't dealt with that shame that you've built up and that pain and that, like, it's almost like, wow. I mean, Randy, when I heard you say, or we were talking one time and you said, or texted or whatever it was, that you because I talk about self-love a lot because that's the journey I've been on. It's just pure love in this world, and why I called this podcast Leading with Love, because I think it's leadership of ourselves and choosing to be love, but also we really don't have a lot of leadership in this world, in my opinion. And what we need is leadership with love. So that's why I called this that. And you and I were kind of having a conversation, and you said self-love. Like, there was a point when I hated myself. I couldn't even grasp the concept of self-love, and that just stabbed me in the heart. It still does. It just crushed me. I just felt so much pain, and that's just me hearing that. So I can only imagine how painful that feels, to hate yourself and climb
Yeah.
out of that hole.
Yeah. So again, it's one of those things that I don't know. I could go on and on about it, but it doesn't make sense to rate myself about it. But it again, it explains why people will not accept help or do the
Yes.
thing. And this is
They're
where
not
the
even in
empathy
that frame of mind at all.
in recovery groups of having that commonality that people can almost give permission for others to go, me too. You can talk
Yeah.
like we've been doing right now, that when people, whether they're saying internally or they verbalize it to the group, yeah, me too. I felt the same way. And you start, because again, you don't talk about this
It
stuff, at
opens
least
you
not
up
when
a little
you're doing
bit. Yeah.
it. You think you're the only person in the world. You're the worst person in the world. No one else. I mean, my moment of realizing I wasn't alone in this mindset, I'm in a meeting and this guy is talking about wanting to take a shovel to his wife's head.
Okay.
And yeah, I won't get into all the
No, but
reasons why.
that's big, right? I mean, to admit something like that, that's the safety that the group had.
Yeah, and I personally didn't think he was actually going to take the shovel to her head, but him expressing such anger towards this woman.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest things I was carrying around shame with me was how I resented my wife always telling me to stop drinking.
Hmm.
The woman, here's the person who loves me more than anyone else in the world, and I love her. And that fucking bitch, can she just get off my back, kind
At
of
that
thing.
time, it did not feel supportive or
And
loving.
that's like, again, that whole kind of rejection of her love and
Mm-hmm.
feeling ashamed. This is just not right. I know I shouldn't be responding this way, but this is genuinely how I
And
feel
that
and
felt like
such.
an
And
attack.
yeah, I was really ashamed of that, and felt I was the only person in the world who did. Again, I'm the worst of the worst kind of thing. And here I am in a meeting, and this guy's also expressing in his own words, again, the
Wow.
details of his own, but I
The
could
anger.
feel that, yeah, here's another person. And when I shared on it, guys in the room were just like, yeah, that's par for the course for an alcoholic.
Wow.
You love getting high probably more than you love your wife, and it's the only way you can find some kind of relief and comfort, by getting wasted. And here she's trying to take away this lifeline that you
Comfort.
have, this you're holding on
And if
to
anything, you
find.
want to escape that too.
Right. So again, it's messy and such, but
Whew.
it's what my point of all this is having community was really, really helpful for me to understand that I wasn't alone. The thoughts and feelings that I had kept hidden from the world and tried to hide from myself, because that's also another challenge. Once this coping mechanism, this way I've been trying to calm all this, is no longer present, of course, now it's there. And there's a saying, trying to live life on life's terms. One of it is just processing things that have been constantly present, that I've denied. I've done everything I could not to feel them. And it's my hypothesis, based upon a relatively small, comparatively, again, we're talking tens of men that I've talked to about with this, that why they relapse is because, yeah, this stuff is so overwhelming that they go back. They know consciously that, yeah, this is a bad choice. I shouldn't do this.
Hmm.
But the only way I know that I can find some form of relief from what's going on. And basically the only way you can get through this is again, as you talked about just a few minutes earlier, is you do have to feel this. You do
Yes.
have to process
The
this
only
emotion,
way out is through.
and that's difficult. But again, with community, when I mentioned having one individual that you can feel safe enough with, that you can go, yeah, right now I am not okay. I am
Yes.
far from okay right now. And Alan, probably his biggest gift was he very rarely told me things unless specifically asked for help with a situation. And this where I
Right. He just
basically
created a safe space for you, but didn't like lecture or advise or anything like that.
questions
Right.
where there was one time the first gentleman, I am in this role of a sponsor trying to help somebody, and it's not an easy thing.
No,
and
I
uh,
can imagine. It's just
and
kudos to you.
yeah, he's just kind of, I'm like, I'm losing patience with this guy.
Isn't
And
that
Alan,
amazing? You know how that feels to be on the other side of it, and yet on the side of mentorship, it's still a challenge.
oh
This is
yeah,
how
yeah.
powerful
Well,
this stuff is.
I'm kind of pushing the edge. I'm being more patient and kind than I ever have before, but it's a struggle and it's a challenge. It's a new behavior. It's a new paradigm I'm with.
Right.
And anyway, my point is going to Alan with expressing my frustration because, of course, in like the meetings and with this gentleman, I want to act like I'm cool and composed and everything's
Right.
okay.
But now you have someone to go back to.
Patience with him, and Alan came, instead of telling me anything, he just like, "Do you ever think anyone can have too much patience, Randy?" I'm like, "No," and he goes, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. If you ever find somebody who's got too much patience, let me know." And he would talk.
Wow. This is where you get partially your beautiful questions from in the group because you are always asking very you know this. This is your intention.
Well,
Thought
thank
provoking
you.
questions.
That again, it's very much I'm modeling a person who helped me.
Right. Yeah. It's brilliant.
Also, I am benefiting probably as much, if not more, than anyone with the responses because it helps me better understand. I'm challenging my beliefs. I see things a certain way. And next thing you know, somebody will point something out, and it's like, wow, I never considered it this way. Thank you so much. But also, yeah,
I
I'm a
love it.
little.
I love even myself reading the
I
responses.
want
Oh, sorry.
the world to know this. This is the little secret. I want the world to know that if they again, there'll be a paid community involved coming up that'll be
Hmm.
outside of Facebook world. Won't be a lot of money and such, but the paying is actually just that people are demonstrating they recognize value in this,
Yes.
so they're more likely to
Commitment.
be engaged and benefit with what's being shared, and kind of weed out the people that again you give things away for free and stuff. They don't necessarily respect and value it and stuff.
Hmm.
But anyway, when you if somebody's going to move forward with this, they know that again part of the process is self-reflection, okay, self-awareness, meditation, and service are the
Absolutely.
three pillars.
Thank
So
you.
getting again knowing that there's good questions involved in self-reflection, but more importantly knowing that there's a community of people around that can share their wisdom as well. So of course you don't know until you really will walk through the door and such what it's like. But again, it's kind of marketing that people are like, oh yeah, you know what, if anything about easier ways, it's yeah, it's a place where good questions are asked
Yes.
and great answers are supplied, and it really makes me consider things that I wasn't considering before. And it's built upon the hypothesis that we all really know what we need.
Hmm.
We deep down we lack nothing.
I
But
agree.
the
And we're
challenge,
reflections for each other.
yeah, the challenge is, of course, is we do have these narratives that we've picked up over the years. Again, with these biases, this
Yeah.
perspective.
The blind spots.
Yeah, and there's you have to come into this with an open mind, practice honesty, and be willing to challenge your beliefs, to discern what's no longer serving you and what is. I mean, certainly not everything you base your identity upon is wrong, but there are some things that you're holding on to. Again, and it's easier is you just go, yeah, you know what, I probably shouldn't think this way anymore, because yeah, I can see it's causing more problems. Actually, the way this is what I've talked with a lot of people about before we officially go through the steps, is these confirmation biases and such, and
Mm-hmm.
admit you don't like being wrong, and
Right.
because of that, you've had problems. And so yeah, I see
Of
everything
course.
this way, and anybody who challenges
This
these
is the way it
beliefs,
is. This is the way it should
yeah,
be.
yeah, you've got
But
to
that's what's
counter.
so beautiful about the group and the questions, because for me, it's really interesting for me to hear your perspective of your group and that you're also learning from it. Of course, now that you say that, it makes sense. But one of the beauties that I find being in this group of yours is, well, as you said, so even as you said about Alan, your mentor, he doesn't lecture you, and you're not lecturing us. Nobody's getting lectured. You're asking questions, and you're inviting that self reflection without saying that you're inviting self reflection. It just naturally happens because people are putting answers to your questions, and I like navigating those answers because it's every single time it's fascinating to me how different they are, and yet everyone's so willing to share that we are really co-creating here. Like, co-creating is one of my favorite words. We're co-creating the world that we want to live in by all sharing our different perspectives, but in a place of safety, so that, because nobody jumps on each other ever in your group, so we can say our perspective, and you'll see that everybody likes each other's answers even though they're totally different. You're creating this beautiful, diverse, and yet connected group of people growing that are helping each other through things.
Yeah. I'm
And
glad you recognize it. That's the
yes,
way I see it. But I've got, again, speaking of biases, it's
that's the way you see it, of course.
kind of my baby. But yeah, this morning we had an open discussion. It was open to
Yes,
all
I'm sorry I
members.
missed it. I was in the middle of a podcast interview. I wanted to come. How was it? Tell me.
It went very, very well. Again, of 450 some members and such, there was a couple people that showed up, and they
Okay.
were exactly the right people. One of the
Ah,
things
yeah.
is I'm in my mind envisioning how I want to do this. I'm like, yeah, what happens if a bunch of people show up? How am I going to? I'm trying to be the host. I can't necessarily manage a bunch of people who would want to, ask questions or contribute to the conversations. So having two other people was exactly the right volume.
Ooh.
If you can see how you can imagine if there was one other person in this dialogue.
Exactly. Yeah. So you had a really beautiful, intimate conversation. You could go deep.
Yeah, everybody could be seen and heard, and no one talked over each other. But again, the topic was, better decision making.
Mm-hmm.
And things were discussed that I would have never ever come up with if it had been a monologue. The dynamic and the depth that was going on with both um, Judith, who goes by, oh, my brain's skipping her, Jude,
Oh,
I
it's
believe.
okay. We'll give them their
Yes.
anonymity for this because it's going to be a podcast.
Were in the group, and it was one of those moments where everything was exactly the way it was supposed to be.
Yep.
And we touched on actually on this, that again, if we have the paradigm of we lack nothing, we have everything we need. If anything that isn't present is just basically, again, something that is an unrealistic expectation.
Or didn't need to be there. And
Well, yeah, because again, the results speak for themselves.
yes.
So it was, kind of like, yeah, I don't need to hold on to results and expectations as tightly as I have in the past.
Good.
When when
Expectations are killer.
yeah, yeah. So in fact, that's a very common saying in recovery.
Is it?
Expectations are yeah, resentments are. Gosh, my brain.
It's okay.
Again, expectations are resentments waiting to happen.
Ooh. Yeah, I haven't been in that recovery world, so but that's a beautiful truth right there. It's true. Wow. Yep. That's
And
worth
again,
this conversation right there.
things
Okay.
that are in recovery world, it doesn't happen to be necessarily one particular addiction, but yeah,
Mm-hmm.
the how this will come about is, again, how to get through major life transitions, navigate them with a little easier way, is using the same practices, same principles that millions of people in the recovery world have used to turn their lives around.
Right.
So what is standard operating procedure for anybody in recovery. And if somebody's in 12-step program, you've probably heard all this stuff before. But there's an audience that has never been exposed to this for whatever reason. Some people
Right.
have no interest at
I'm
all.
one
And
of those people. I understand
yeah,
the 12 steps, but some of this is new for me. And I think the way that you're describing it as being applicable, because we're humans first, right? This is human stuff. Expectations and resentments are human things that we all feel. So that beautiful sentence that came out of that recovery world, expectations are resentments waiting to happen. Stunning, simple, easy to remember. As soon as you catch yourself with an expectation, I will remember that. And so everything that you're saying as it applies to, I've really, really loved that you know and are sharing your mission of this not just being about addiction recovery. You're changing jobs. You're getting into a new relationship. You are moving across the country. Even you said you're joining new groups and finding new friends. All of these things apply because wherever we go, there we are, right? So
exactly.
you can help everybody.
I have never met someone who's gone through the 12 steps. When asked, do you think this could benefit everyone? Every single person has answered, oh, absolutely. But again,
Right.
until you go through it, you don't understand the value. And certainly there's a language and an emphasis in whatever recovery group. So the 12 steps are all basically the same, but there's all these different ones, whether it's, Alcoholics Anonymous,
Mm-hmm.
non, codependency, gambling, whatever it may be. The framework is all the same, but there's an emphasis on the specific
Whatever.
challenges
Yeah.
for the person. And yeah, it's proven itself for millions and millions of people to be a
Right.
process of discovery. And again, it's always been with you. This answer, this solution of, again, but basically, again, a lot
Well,
of people.
exactly, because it's just inner work, right? So
Yes, so
it's
a lot of
knowing what your patterns are and what your feelings are and actually feeling them, and where you've been out of integrity with who you really want to be and what is really you and what isn't and how you want to show up in the world. It encompasses so much. It's really just personal and spiritual development work. If I may, I mean, that's how I see it, is however you come to this work, it's healing. It's coming back home to who you really are. It's getting out of your head and into your heart. That's how I see it anyway. And you're just bringing a formal structure into this work and creating space for that and bringing tools that, as you said, have proven to work for millions of people in whatever their situation might be, because it applies everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. So, my structure of this is really in three phases. The first one's identity, second one's integrity, third one I've labeled serenity.
Mm.
But the first one, again, with identity, is such, getting clarity on the problem, getting clarity on the solution, and making a commitment to get into action.
Yep.
Now that you have this new awareness of where you are and what. Now, where I deviate from it is so the second step is came to believe the power greater than yourselves can restore you to sanity. Now, most people get hung up with the power greater than yourselves, with the challenges with God and the
Yes.
concept there. Mine was insanity, because in the
Oof.
meetings of what they were talking about, it was the insane behavior of using. And as I'm going through this step, I've been sober for a while. I was not blacking out every night like I was.
Wow.
So, in reference or in context of the meetings, I'm not insane like this. And I was very fortunate. Alan goes, I understand, and you should be proud of yourself. You've done very, very well. Not everyone can stay sober as long as you have. But there's some things from your past that you're holding on to.
This is what
And
Alan said to you.
yeah, Alan comes up, and I'm like, yeah, I am. And guess what? We're not going to talk about it today.
Yeah, I felt that energy just when you were saying it. You're like, and we're not going there.
Yeah, and he comes back when he goes, but right there, your reaction and stuff, that past stuff, how you don't even want to talk about it, that means it still has a lot of power over you.
It's hurting you.
Truth.
You may not have said that word,
Yeah,
but yeah.
yeah, the past is done. No one can change the past. But again, what you're holding on to, how you're seeing this, you're wishing for a different past. And Randy,
So it's like your energy is fractured.
yeah, this is the shame.
Oh,
Shame is looking for a different past. And I'm like, and I'm kind of coming, yeah, and we're not going to talk about it. He goes, no, no,
right.
no.
So you're coming into self-forgiveness and acknowledging and oh, so much
But that's the
healing.
thing. So going through this process, again, instead of saying a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity, and by the way, I believe in God. But again, I know a lot of people have challenges with it. I've worded as came to believe life can be greater than you ever asked for or even imagined.
Right.
And it comes with getting clear on your why, your purpose, your North Star. Something's important enough to you that you will continue through this self inquiry when it is difficult. When you get to those moments when I'm not even going to think about this stuff, as we talked about earlier, we need to feel the feelings, and hopefully we can regulate them enough that it's not in a harmful way. And that's why it's very, very helpful to have at least one other individual or support
Right.
network.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're tempted, and we all are, it's to go back to the ways that we've seen some evidence of effectiveness. You can reflect and ask yourself, what's more important right now? This immediate
Right.
gratification or long-term satisfaction? And again, if you long-term satisfaction being your why, your purpose of why you're doing
Your
this.
peace of
It's a,
mind and heart too.
yeah, yeah. So the thing is with this is again, it doesn't disagree with anybody's spiritual beliefs,
Right.
but it's a more secular type of approach to this. It's like, yeah, um, it's very much the be do you have. Okay, who do I want to be? Okay,
Yes.
you can ask those questions. Okay, in reference to
Exactly.
what would a sober man do in this situation? I don't want to go to work today. I don't feel like it. Well, what would a sober man do? He'd go to work anyway.
What
He'd
would the
honor.
best me do? What would the person I want to show up as in this world actually do? And then you start behaving that way. That's just a brilliant question all around.
And again, and then you do the things.
And it
Okay, so you
becomes a
be,
habit, and then you are that person.
and then you have everything's needed for this journey. What's
Hmm.
wonderful is a person added to that share. So be, do, have, share, and
Yeah.
that's again that gratitude and that evidence, like you have, Shauna, and such. You have so much that you can give freely, and it's this
But it
interesting
was a process, like everyone's.
that you can never give out too much. You are always replenished. This flow of life
Yes.
energy, love, again, leading with love.
Yes.
It's always replenished. It is a natural resource that can never ever be extinguished. And
Yes.
again, if you're listening to this, it sounds a little goofy and almost impossible for you. I get it. I bring this up because I did it one time. But
Woo.
again, you are being this way, and you're doing these things that are congruent with this state of being of this again this person you envision of your future self.
Was,
Okay,
well, that would have been me envisioning this 2 years ago.
when you have everything, again, that's coming from a place of abundance. Okay, then yeah, then you can amplify, put like gas on the fire and such.
Mm.
And it goes on and on, but much like if you're in a very depressed and a negative energy and such, and all you're seeing are problems. Okay,
Right.
if all you're looking for is if you're looking for a problem, you're going to find it.
Exactly
Okay,
so.
but if you're looking for a solution, you will find it. That's the
Yes.
other thing as well. We were kind of heat-seeking missiles. When again, back to kind of confirmation bias. If we want to again,
Yes. Exactly.
we are coming from a space of love. This was one of the most influential things that was discussed this morning in our group. You know,
Beautiful.
if how to make better decisions is how are we going to be? And
Yes.
when Judith brought up, it's like, no, am I going to be from a place of love or from fear?
Yeah.
And that is really the thing in this, again, going through the fourth and fifth steps, this personal inventory thing, it got revealed that everything I was doing was driven by fears. So again, I was coming from a place of scarcity. No wonder I'm so defensive and stuff. And I having a mentality, a worldview that the world is against me. Okay,
Right.
so
Wow.
and again, it's hell on earth kind of stuff, and realizing no, the world is not against you. Yes, there are some people that are predators and stuff, but it's nowhere near as much as I'm convinced it is. And slowly but surely, looking more and more for the good in people. Well, actually, better is like looking for similarities, not differences,
Oh,
because we all
yes.
feel that love with us. If
Yes.
we can dissipate some of this again, this bias that, I'm a bad person and therefore
Well,
all people are bad and all
right,
this
because
kind of,
of course you're going to apply that same filter to others.
and doggone it, if that's what I believe, I am going to find evidence to prove that everybody's wrong. I mean, so one of
Doggone it, you don't hear that every day.
so if, for example, if say you're left at the altar, okay,
Yes.
you are engaged with someone. I mean, it's like the worst kind of heartbreak I can
Pain.
invent.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are right at the altar and you get stood up, and therefore, in whatever gender, if you're a lady, okay, you conclude that all men are bad.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, it's a great
Yeah,
analogy. Men are
yeah,
just, yeah.
yeah,
I won't
all
go
men are
there.
bad, and I can't
Yeah.
trust them and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, you may date again. Again, your heart's broken and stuff. You never ever want to have it, but that's again, eventually it's like, you know what, I need to get back and date and stuff.
Yes.
It's been 3 years, kind of thing. But it starts becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy that, yeah, the people that you're with, yeah, actually, and they may
You're
not
either going to
necessarily.
attract someone who's going to fulfill that for you because that's your true deep down vibrational belief, or you're just never going to trust anyone. You're not going to have a great relationship and never have that open hearted connection that you actually crave, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because in this hypothetical situation, there was at one time you believed in marriage enough that you were going to
You were
continue
putting
on.
it all on the line for love, exactly. And if you don't go in and do your own healing work, you're going to project that out forever. That's a really great point. And this is still all comes back to healing work.
Yeah, absolutely. And it takes a long time. But yeah, you're again, you start. These people may not necessarily be, again, your negative energy is drawing negative people, but again, you're also looking for all the reasons why this person
Right.
is a potential person that's going to
And
betray
that
you.
makes
Like,
you prickly. You're looking for
maybe,
things that are wrong.
yeah, and guess what? You'll find them.
Yeah, of
You
course, we're
want
human.
you will always find there is something wrong in the situation.
Yeah,
It's,
absolutely.
um, and kind of toxic positivity is the opposite of that. Is you're always looking for the good and everything perfect in this person. You become infatuated, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is the most absolute
Perfect
wonderful world.
fantasy. Oh, that'll set you up for a fall.
Anything wrong? Well, no. Again, then you're let down when all of a sudden you recognize it's like, oh wait a minute, this person's human and has their flaws, like,
Flaws.
so trying to neutralize, not being too negative, not being too positive, finding some middle ground there so you can discern. And again, this is the saying, life on life's terms. Is it all good? No. Is it all bad? No. It's hard sometimes, and sometimes it's really wonderful. And it's interesting when the pendulum hasn't flown to the right or the left. It isn't all good. It isn't all bad. Another thing that's real common with addicts and alcoholics is you're either all in or all out. Okay.
Right. So you do a lot of black and white thinking.
Yeah. And my intention again is with these questions is help people recognize that there is alternative ways to look at stuff, and there's a lot of grays in between.
Right.
It's
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 true,
not
isn't
all
it?
good.
As you get older, you realize there's a lot of gray areas in life. It's not black and white at all.
Yeah. So again, it's a process and such, and it's best done in community. And
Mm-hmm.
if community could just be one other person, that's more than fine.
It
But
was for
setting up
you.
where again, typically again is, well, it's worked for millions of people. You're
Yes.
in you enter into a community that has enough commonality, and you can identify. And this is again part of the identification thing is. I've seen it countless times. People benefit much more by identification than information.
Right. Me
So,
too. I feel that way too. I did
yeah.
that. I felt that. It's such a beautiful thing. It's just making you feel seen and like, okay, we can talk about this.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So the process moves forward that, yeah, that you decide that, yeah, there's, again, you're not a foe, you're a friend
Yeah.
and such. Again, hopefully that can be something that isn't necessarily a toxic relationship codependency. I've seen that
Right,
happen.
right,
And
right. Of
I'm
course.
involved in those situations. And if it does occur, having more and more people in the community that you can find support with. But it's a process that takes a long, long time, and it's always longer than we want. You know, to a point where we have epiphanies, where we start again realizing that life is a good place to be. And we go from hateful to being grateful.
Yes.
And that gratitude, gosh,
It's
it,
huge. It's a game changer.
I've read books talking it's the highest vibration, the highest frequency we can live at. And yeah, and that's the thing. Is I don't understand it, but again, going through life with much more of an attitude of gratitude than being defensive
Truly.
and hateful and such, that even when you encounter people that are adversarial and such, you can kind of be like the Big Lebowski and say, okay, that's just your opinion, dude.
The dude.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
when we're touching on gratitude, I mean, this is something that I basically feel like I'm walking gratitude. And I think that, it can come across as toxic positivity, the way that I am, but it's actually not, because it's so from my soul. It's just coming through me. And I've been through that fire. I've had to choose to keep my heart open through some very, very painful things. This joy and gratitude comes from having been through that fire. It's not Pollyanna. It's healed. It's a healed person you're looking at.
Hmm.
Heartbreak, loss, all the things, shame. Like I've intentionally gone into all these things wanting to heal it. And what you brought up or implied is that you do need to have that intention. You have to start choosing, who do I want to be? You have to start being willing to ask those questions and make a choice in the moment when something shows up. And when you start doing that repeatedly, it becomes a habit. You really do live into the person that you wanted to be. Like if I think about myself a couple of years ago and how much I really truly do embody love now, I wasn't always like that. I might have been bright and sunshiny and generally happy, but I was not like this. This comes from a choice to keep my heart open no matter what. And that often takes, I can't even tell you how much courage when something painful happens, like keeping my heart open, whew, because I know this is the choice I've made of who I am. That I will keep my heart open no matter what. And it's not always easy, but boy, the rewards are so palpable and beautiful. And that gratitude, I know when I wake up and I'm feeling, I mean, like stuff is weird. Like you said, life can be painful and there's a lot going on and we feel isolated and stuff happens and I feel off. Like almost every day I have moments where I just feel awful. But one of my anchors is gratitude. So I get back into that and I look around and I think, what can I be grateful for? And my God, the list is endless. I can see you. We have connection. I do have a heart still. I'm breathing. I have beautiful friends and soul family. You mean like literally the sky is blue and you can look at it and be grateful for your vision. There is always something to be grateful for, no matter what you are going through. And it is a shift in perspective and it's a choice to make that shift.
Hmm.
I agree with you and I love how you approach that. And gosh, wow, we're already at almost an hour. I want to hear about, I love that. I mean, that's the beauty of how a conversation can flow. I'm so grateful for you.
And likewise. So, and again, I don't want anybody to misunderstand. When I say toxic positivity, you're denying the emotions that are negative, that are painful and such.
Mm-hmm.
That that's why it's toxic, because it's not going away. It is
Right.
still
You're just burying it.
there, and next thing you know, it comes out sideways
Woo.
and
Yes.
such. So no, why I try to compare it with the same kind of darkness of it could be also called toxic negativity, but that's almost so obvious it doesn't get mentioned.
Yeah.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
it's being so far on the spectrum. Again, it's all in or all out kind of stuff. Everything's terrible, everything's dark,
Right.
or everything's bright
Life is
and
the worst.
shiny and such, and it's not real. And we have to, again, using that phrase, life on life's terms, getting real, being
Mm.
honest, and having those moments when, yeah, not only are you saying me too in regards to I'm identifying with you in a positive way, but also when I see the pain and the suffering
Mm-hmm.
in you, I get that empathy that you have as well. Is that, yeah,
Thank
me
you.
too. It's one of these things that it's not easy, but it is really that simple of identifying, recognizing similarities instead of difference with human
Mm-hmm.
people. So when people are doing well and they're joyous, right on. That is so awesome. I feel no envy. Okay. I feel
Right.
only joy and gratitude as opposed to like, why do all good things happen to this person and it happens to me kind of stuff. No, it's awesome. I'm so
Woo!
happy. Congratulations that this is going on with your life. And we can talk about this, but you'll have to do the journey yourself. We hopefully
Yes,
can X over the spot on the map where you can start digging.
but you have to
And,
want to.
but it begins with a desire. Typically, pain is the touchstone of change. We have to feel enough pain to get motivated to start challenging these beliefs and, most importantly, doing contrary actions, because we can't think our way into right living. We have to live our way into right thinking.
Woo,
Other,
okay. Mic drop.
well, again, it's just, well, so the thing is how many people will talk about something? Well, back to this vision and stuff.
Forever.
I've talked about this for years, forever and a couple days, and but actions speak louder than words and stuff. And I've 16 years into sobriety. I've done more inner work than I think of any other year, but maybe year 4 when when I really did this in
You were
earnest.
diving deep, yeah.
And addressing a lot of my childhood issues
Thank
that
you.
I thought had been dealt with, but were coming up. Basically, in short order, it always felt growing up that I was less than others or better than others.
Ooh.
And yeah,
There's
so
two sides to that
I know
coin.
envy very well. I know self pity very well. But I also know being a predator very well and trying to put you down to lift myself up. And
That's a big admission. Thank you.
these were things that, I still really didn't want to entertain. And it took a lot of work. And again, it was with the help of other people that this came together. I did new modalities and I did energetic work. I did hypnotism this year, things that were very, very effective.
Good.
Did some NLP work this year. And
Fantastic.
so, it's an interesting paradigm because life is better than it's ever been, but I could sit at this level, this plateau,
Mm.
and again, it's really good. But I'm not allowing myself to grow and evolve to the next level, kind of shed my skin one more time and stuff. And that is a big challenge for a
Okay.
lot of people. I've gone through the hero's journey once, and
Mm-hmm.
I've
And you think
had
you're
the
done, or you could be.
right. So this is another thing in the community. There's a lot of people that have gone through and done the inner work, and hopefully they can be in this environment where people are talking this way and realize, by the way, you hopefully can recognize that there's still some more work to be done that will allow you to expand and evolve
Even
to a new
more.
level.
Well, it's
And
time in the world for that now, right? It's like you've done your healing and you kind of get to neutral, and it's such a relief that it's easy to stay there, right? Because you're not in acute or even chronic or both pain anymore. But now it's time to call each other forth, right?
mhm,
To expand even more and bring our gifts to this world, which is what you're doing. And when you were talking, I was thinking about that toxic this and that, and the negative side of it, where when you're in that, you think that's all there is, because that's what your brain tells you, right? There's only crap, quite frankly. And when you're sort of Pollyannaing it, or even spiritual bypassing is another way to say it, right? You're only love and light. And I mean, yeah, you're not being in that neutral state. I remember the mentor that we both, how we met. We were in a group, for those listening and watching, of someone who ran a group, and he was a mentor, and he used to talk about, you need to be so, and I'm paraphrasing here, present and not running patterns, and having done your healing work and inner work, such that if you won $1 million tomorrow, you wouldn't, like, you'd be happy, but you wouldn't give you the energetic hit as it would an unhealed person. Just the same way as if you lost $1 million tomorrow, you're still at your center, because you're not looking outside of you so much for joy or gain, or the loss doesn't impact you as much either, because you're just, that things happen in life, and you have this more of a state of grace that you can handle these things. That's what healing feels like to me.
it does for me too. Yeah, and again,
Mm.
it's one thing to talk about it, but when you have a deep knowing in your head and your heart and your gut, when you talk about the embodiment, and that's what, again, it's it's
Yeah.
it's in your gut. It's like, some again,
Yes.
this is like the whole, well, that's just your opinion. Is I've challenged my beliefs. I've done certain actions and such that have shown me the cracks in my beliefs,
And you have to be willing to look at some pretty uncomfortable things about yourself.
yeah, just understanding that what I've been sharing with you today, these are my truths, and people listening to them can agree, disagree, or whatever. It This is what gives me the fortitude and the and confidence, the safety
Ooh, yeah.
to go forth and be of service when things are not easy. In fact, actually, they're quite tragic for in some people's situations,
Yes.
and still be centered enough,
Hmm.
but also being compassionate and present enough. It's really hard to put into words, but it is the reminder that there's still more work, because I can be in the presence of someone who it's just starting this type of work. There
Right.
is still, their whole world is darkness, and it reminds me of when I'm in that place and such.
Hmm.
But it also was in that place, but it reminds me how I can still have
Mm.
this going on in a way that, okay, I've dealt with the 800-pound gorilla, but there's still the monkeys flinging poo. I still have a monkey mind and stuff.
Right.
Or even
Yeah,
some days,
we're human.
but there's still little vermin running around in the course. There's always work to
Yep.
go
Well,
on.
I think as our in our lifetimes, that's just the way it's going to be because life happens, as you said, right? Until we fly off with angels' wings or something, and we're not in these bodies anymore, we're going to have challenges. We're going to have life coming at us, and your work is such a beautiful space. I love it. And I want to ask you before I let you go about, so I was speaking at the beginning about your mission and the group that you have, Easier Ways, but you have a really big intention, a really big mission. And what I read, and then I'll just ask you about it, is, you said you want to have brick and mortar space. So yes, this is a stunning, beautiful online space. Are we not so lucky to be able to connect online and have these structures that are just virtual, but so powerful and helpful? But also you want to have brick and mortar spaces all around the world where people can come and do this work, and you have trained people who themselves have been through this and are able to hold physical, actual space for people who then come at that juncture in their journey when they need you, when they need this. There's somewhere for them to go that is non-denominational. I love just touching in on what you said because about God and your belief in God, but sometimes, quite frankly, if we start talking about God, it sends people away, and you don't want to send anyone away. You want everyone to know, whatever their beliefs, that it's not even necessarily relevant. Their true selves are relevant. Their need for healing, their wanting connection and a safe space to share and be seen and heard, so that they can go on the journey that they're choosing and wanting to go on. That's what you're creating. That's my
Mhm.
words for it. Now what? Let's
Well,
have
it was
yours.
probably better than I could. But yes, so everything's got to start somewhere, and because the nature of the internet is basically anybody who's got Wi-Fi and speaks English can be exposed to this. So the
Not
introduction,
just English.
well, and hopefully someday
Oh, to
yes, there will.
yours. Okay.
Yeah, but again, right now it's like, okay, yeah, there can be communication. There can be an introduction to this type of stuff,
Right.
and that's really all this is. This is an introduction. Now take this, apply it into your life, and test it. If it works, awesome. If it doesn't, okay. You know what doesn't work. And again, it was a lesson that was learned,
Yeah.
and that's what becomes knowledge. When we take information and have applied it, and it's something that's proven itself to, again, when I'm referring, this is what I'm convinced of. Okay, this is something now that you can apply and use every day, and you use it enough, then eventually it kind of turns into this wisdom stuff.
Yes.
And,
Experiential learning.
but yeah, and having in a cyberspace a safe place for people to be seen and heard, to know they're safe, to have a diversity, a variety, and such, so though it's interesting, there's enough
It
commonality,
is
but
really.
we don't want to necessarily be, I don't know, eating the same type of food every day. We like diversity in life. We want to be seen. We want to be heard. We want to be valued, appreciated. Again, all those things in a healthy community,
Yes.
healthy families, and such. Unfortunately, some of us didn't grow up in healthy families, so
Yeah.
we can have chosen family. And again, so this platform, it's on a platform called Circle, and in
Okay.
the circle, the big circle of Easier Ways, there can be smaller subgroups. So there can be a Shauna group inside of it, and you're a leader in your conducting manner, in a way where, again, people are recognizing you, appreciating you, and you're
Okay.
nourishing. It's an environment, and it's it's a specialized need. But again, it's because it's part of a bigger ecosystem. If somebody gets kind of bored with what you're presenting, they can kind of sift
Go to
over
somebody else's.
and stuff. But all in all, it's a humanitarian effort. This is the commonality. So churches very much will have a certain belief system, a doctrine, a deity, doctrine, deity, dogma. That was the third word, and such. And you get it can be beneficial to a lot of people and such. In this community that I envision, what I want to create is like, okay, our commonality is humanity.
Yes, that's what I was feeling. Yeah.
And, you know, so the first 90 days of me putting this community together, I want to have 100 people that can say what you just did. Yes, this is cool. I want to do this. I want to be a part of this community. And then it'll just reveal itself quite organically and naturally who are basically the 10% that are like, oh yeah, I'm all in. And I want to really help build this mission. So again, I'm the guy who's starting it, but eventually I want it to be something where I don't know, there'll be a time when I'm no longer on this earth, that it's self-sustainable and can move forward. And, you know, it's much more about principles and practices than anyone's personality involved with it.
Yes.
Now,
beautiful.
The thing about being in brick and mortar locations, this all in all, frankly, is two-dimensional. We need to go from two-dimensional to three-dimensional for us to hit that fourth-dimensional mysterious thing that's really hard to talk about. But when we've all felt it and been there and like, oh my God, did you see that too? Right. Oh yeah, getting the goosebumps again. This energetic thing that, why do people go to live sporting events and live concerts and stuff?
Exactly. That feeling of being alive. And yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So again, if maybe it might be somebody that decides then, okay, they've be reintroduced to why they wanted to be part of a community, and they can kind of now be a little more selective of if they choose to go to a church. It's like, well, this is what's acceptable, and you know, the non-negotiable part. I will not be in a toxic church community and such. And why when I say toxic, it doesn't allow free thinking.
Right. Exactly. You're creating a very wide open, but also
yourself and question what is being said in the group. That is my definition of toxic. It's like,
okay, I hear you.
God said that this is the way it is and stuff. And, well,
I've got
God gave you a brain to think, and as far as I'm concerned, God allows for questions and stuff, but you don't.
We are naturally curious creatures. We were built that way, so.
Not against religion, God, or anything again. I'm just against predators. I'm against the bullies in this world. There's people that are manipulated for their own gain, and they can be convinced to the core that they're doing things out of God's will. But when you see the codependency and the toxicity and such, and again, it's all good and it's us against them and stuff. It's very inclusive and not exclusive.
It's not unity.
It's
the other way.
Yeah, you want to have it where it's open to everyone. If it's only a select few, we're the good people. It's an us against them. We're the good people, and if you agree with us and you're in with us, okay, you're cool.
If not, you're out. Yeah, well, we need unity.
Friend or foe, and getting to a point where no, we're going to have different viewpoints on a lot of things, but the commonality, we are humans. We're all born with an inherent dignity, just for the fact that you are alive.
Yes, sir.
You have certain dignities that need to be respected, and again, it's things like being able to feel safe.
Yes, beautiful.
And to be able to give and receive love, but not doing it in a way that, again, is manipulative, judgmental, and so it's hard to necessarily talk about, but and that's the thing, is where it needs to be real, where people can come and experience and determine for themselves if it's the right fit. But yeah, having these brick and mortar, and they don't necessarily need to be, you know, the guidelines of what's going on in the cyberspace community and such. If it can just all of a sudden inspire somebody going, yeah, that's cool. I like what you're doing over there in Las Vegas. I should do it too. Then if you want help, you know, it's like, well, I don't know necessarily all the right things to do, but I can tell you some of the things to avoid. We've already gone through some big mistakes.
Yes.
So let me share with you some of the stuff that you should probably kind of keep an eye out for not
Yep.
happening again, that would probably make it a little bit easier. Which
Yeah.
again,
Easier
easier
ways.
to just you get risk aversion kind of stuff, but not to be all fearful. Okay? You're not always trying to prevent loss, but again, if you don't have as much of the hindrances and the things holding you back, then healthy and growth can come. Again,
Yes.
things
It's a really
that,
great balance as with everything, right? So here's
yeah.
a
So
question then. Go ahead. Sorry, Randy. Go ahead.
well, I know again, just one of my cornerstones that I don't think it's ever going to change is unsolicited advice. At best, is an insult. At worst, it's abuse. So
Woof.
no unsolicited advice. If somebody asks a question, like you can imagine in like a Facebook group, somebody
Yeah.
says, "This is what's going on. Anybody have advice on this?" Again, they've given consent.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
But if somebody needs to just vent and talk
Mm-hmm.
about a situation, but they're not ready to seek advice or do anything different, they just got to let off the steam.
So it's just
And
holding space for people.
yeah, so there'll be like actually a circle of basically an area where people can just kind of shout at the moon,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
and
Until
no
and
one's
unless someone says, "Can you give me some advice?" then it's sharing, it's seeing each other, commonality. I've
yeah.
got it. Okay. Beautiful. You're really giving me insight into I really now see even more deeply why you run your group the way you do on Facebook and what your deepest values are, and you really are truly bringing them to that unquestionably. You're congruent.
Well, and that's also one of the things that I just came to this week of coming through a process where people can get clarity on what their highest values are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, okay, so if I want to be part of this group, and if I'm in this group, who shares these same highest values for them to go into that space for
Into
that
that
person?
circle.
And I right now I'm 98% sure the Enneagram is how we'll be able to allow people to discern
Okay.
what
I have
these.
some friends, you might know them as well, that are really, really diving deeply into that, and they're really brilliant at it. So this is definitely a thing.
Yeah, so that the methodology of it, but just again self awareness. Okay, I
Mm-hmm.
happen to be more on the Enneagram and such, and I know personalities that are complementary to that, and I know those that are not as complementary,
Right.
and
Know
that helps.
thyself, and yep.
Mhm. So anyway, you were going to ask a question.
Oh no, I was just going to ask for so basically the timeline on this. So right now, people can find you in the Facebook group Easier Ways, and I feel like with many groups, it's kind of a self-filtering thing, right? No one's going to come into that group that doesn't really resonate with what you're about. It's going to be pretty obvious very quickly to someone whether this is a group they want to be in or not. So anyone who is naturally drawn to it is probably going to be a good fit and would leave if they weren't. Um,
Yeah.
Hopefully.
It's like a funnel. This is free. I invite people and people can join. I do kind of look at your profile before I bring you in there and such. So to
Okay.
help prevent risk aversion type of stuff.
Mm.
But yeah, the timeline probably no later than the first of the year.
Oh
There
wow.
will
Okay.
be a group and such. But the first phase of it, because it's just new and we
Yep.
don't really have a community yet, it's not won't be that much different than the Facebook group. It's going to be free. And so again, in
Okay.
the yeah, here's a free space. Here's some information, podcast, articles, books, recording, opportunities for people to get to know each other and such. And then if you go, yeah, I'd like to go to the next level, and this is
Yes.
the kind of thing where it's going to take some time to develop stuff, and this is where having the first 100 is going to be hugely, hugely influential. Because I have my vision, but I want it to be a community where
Yeah.
the community is more deciding what.
It'll be driven by those who step up, like you said, that 10% who
And
says
then
yes, 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 yes.
that, my goal again needs to be time based, and that is in 90 days. There's about 100 people in the group, and approximately 10 people that are like, "Oh yeah, I'm in on this, man. What can I do to help?" And we're having like one-on-one conversations or small group again conversations of 10 or less people that are really kind of telling us like, "Well, everybody's saying we need to do this."
Yes.
And how do we do it though? How do we
Right.
put
And
that
then
together?
you can brainstorm on it from there, because I think it's my belief, and experientially as well, that when we step into our purpose and we're really doing the things that we're passionate about, we came here to do, the right people show up, because you're
Mhm.
clear and clean about who you are. You're putting yourself out there accordingly, and the right people will show up. And it's going, as you said, it's going to organically evolve and expand and just move into something that is, you're the impetus, right? Like you said, it's your baby, but you know this is going to be something bigger than you. It's a beautiful, beautiful vision. I'm so grateful to hear more about it. So, right now, would you say that the way for people to find you as of this recording would be in your Facebook group, Easier Ways?
Yep. Easier way stuff we did to stop being our own worst enemy. It is
Okay.
again a private group because that again we want in the spirit of having safety.
Yes.
Um, you have to be a member in that group
Yep.
to interact. So you will have to make a request, but
Okay.
to be accepted, again, basically, I just want to make sure you're not a bot.
Yeah, no, I got it. That's perfect. I'm really just getting at, I mean, for this state at this time, is that's really where people can find you, Randy, is in the
Yeah,
Facebook group, and to know if they're
exactly.
resonant with it, and then from there it's going to be beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the problem. If you dig what's going on in Facebook, see,
Yeah.
honestly, the algorithms in Facebook limit what we see. Not
Yes.
everybody sees everybody's post and comment and such. Where if we take it offsite in the Circle platform, you'll be able to see everything and you'll be able to search for things easier.
Right.
It's going to
Perfect.
be more productive. And frankly, as an administrator, I can see people who've joined, and if they're in the statistics, if they're not interacting at all, I can reach out to them and ask them if you've seen something that has offended you or it made you change your mind. Could you please be kind enough to point this out? Because we're
Hmm.
really mindful about creating the best space we can. Maybe something someone did or didn't do has caused a problem, and
Oh, that's
we'd like to
beautiful.
know why. So it's that type of
That's
stuff.
lovely.
It's that can.
And they may just be not ready to interact and just really soaking it all in and doing their own processing. But that reach out gives it an even more, gives another level of support. That's like, hey, are you okay? I'm just checking in. Love having you as part of the group. But is there anything that upset you, or just share, right? And then that's beautiful. It's
Yeah.
great. I
So
love it.
you're absolutely right. There will be some people that are like, no, I'm just an introvert. I don't really interact.
Exactly.
I've been checking things out and I like what I see. I'm not going anywhere. This is
Yeah.
cool. And go, oh, by the way, knowing now that you're an introvert, there just happens to be a group of introverts that you
In
can join
circle.
if you're so inclined. And we can
Perfect.
have that type of stuff happening, which again, I don't know really how you put a group of introverts together. No, I do. I have
Nobody
a
says anything and they just look at each other awkwardly.
Right. I have a friend who is an introvert that he's been doing AA meetings at his home twice a week
Ah,
for how long? 12, 15 years
wow.
and stuff. And it works really well. He jokes around that this is the island of misfit toys.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
The
Oh,
interesting thing with his group dynamic is just because you're an introvert doesn't mean you won't connect with other people
right.
and be inspired by them. It's just, yeah, until there's that same
Mm,
frequency going on, back to the safe thing.
yes.
You go into another room and there's also next thing there's a bunch of A-type personalities and stuff, and
Right.
the first is just like, no, I don't want to play.
A
I'm
lot
going to
of
stay.
introverts say that. They say they're introverted until they're with a bunch of people that they really like or they really resonate with, and then they're completely animated because they feel safe. They feel those commonalities, and not overwhelmed by, yeah, as you said, the energy of all these A types, and they're just prefer to be quiet. Beautiful.
Yeah.
I
So
love it. Anything else you want me to know, and you want
no,
everyone to know?
really, again, I appreciate what you're doing here. I think, yeah, it's something that I look forward to sharing with you more. I hope
Mm.
that you and any one of your listeners who hears something here that's attractive would like to be involved with. Yeah, the big audacious goal is like, well, again, I might as well have fun being audacious. I would
Yes,
love
go
to
for it.
see within 5 years, like 1 million people involved between in person and online, like 1 million
Woo!
people involved with this and recognizing that, yeah, that there is a safe space in a world that is easily recognized as unsafe. and threatening.
Mm.
And it for to be, again, when I talk about the second step, life can be greater than you ever asked for or imagined. This group is greater than I could ever ask for or imagine because, again, people are collaborating. Everybody will contribute in their own unique way. But this leadership is what I would determine as collaborators. They believe in the vision enough that
Yes.
they're investing their resource of time, perhaps financial contributions involved. Again, if you can envision you're going to do a brick and mortar, that involves some money.
Yes, I
Okay,
understand. Of
you
course.
need to get benefactors involved in stuff. And again,
Absolutely. It's a
it's
beautiful
just
mission. You will find contributors. You will.
autonomy is the big thing. It's not my vision; it'll be the group conscious that comes together.
Yes. Yes.
And it's just something that will be way bigger than any single individual.
Exactly. I
So,
was just thinking the phrase, it's going to be more than the sum of its parts. When people come together in common purpose, and you're going to have these people who just naturally lean in and feel passionate about it and understand deeply the mission that you're on, and then it becomes all of everybody's mission. It's beautiful. Thank you so much.
you're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you. And again, your title of your podcast, Leading with Love, that would
Yes.
probably be very applicable to what we've been describing. People come in and just like, what are you about? We're about unconditional love. It's so uncommon. So thank you for making it a little more common, that people can start realizing that it is a possibility for them.
Ah.
And it's what really transforms every life.
Exactly. It's my pleasure. It's the key ingredient for me. It is the elixir, the cure for anything, because it's actually just touching back in with what we are. We're made of love, and we sure as heck have not been taught that. Even our
Right.
parents didn't show us unconditional love, but that's actually what we are. And the more we get centered and into our hearts, and as I said, out of the patterns of the awful stuff that our brains, the monkey mind, right, like you said, tries to tell us, the more we just feel that. And then, as you said, we're permission for others to know that they can feel that too. And I'm telling you, it feels way better than hating yourself or being addicted and running away from things. Like, yes, it's painful to process your stuff, but it sure does feel better on the other side of it.
Absolutely. So it's
Thank you,
worth it.
sir. So if you just give me a moment, I'm just going to run my outro for everybody so they can see where to subscribe, etc. It's just a few seconds, and then I will come meet you back in the green room. Thank you, Randy. Wherever you are and whatever you're doing, I hope you enjoyed this episode and it helped you open your heart, feel inspired, and know that we are all connected. Please subscribe and share so this work can touch more people. This is how we co-create the world we want to live in. Thank you so much again for joining us, and talk to you next time.